Alright, so sports and anime, two seemingly completely unrelated things. Some might even say polar opposites. Picture the average athlete, and picture the average anime watcher. Very, very different images. However, for some unexplainable reason, they seem to combine to become even better than either are on their own. Well, hopefully the reason isn't that unexplainable because I'm going to try my best to explain it. But before we delve into that, let's look at the origin and evolution of sports anime. It is not a new genre by any means. In fact, it's rooted all the way back to 1928 when one of the earliest Japanese animators, Yusuji Murata, directed a short film titled Animal Olympic Games. As the title suggests, the film features various animals performing in Olympic sports, like polar bears pole vaulting, elephants throwing discus, and the events are seemingly run and played by monkeys too. But don't quote me on that because my film comprehension skills are really put to the test by century-old silent animations. There are more events, but I think you get the point. The film has a lot of over-the-top slapstick comedy you see in a lot of old silent films, with a touch of anthropomorphism on top. So if you're a big fan of Looney Tunes or Tom and Jerry humor, then maybe you'll get some enjoyment out of it. It might not hold up to sports anime today, but considering it was animated by someone born the same year Utah was admitted into the United States, I think it's a pretty good start to the genre. Already in the first sports anime, Murata used one of the biggest advantages of sports anime in that animation allows for incredible feats that look so much cooler than anything that could happen in real sports, unless a real javelin thrower is hitting the clouds with his javelin. But I don't expect anybody watching this to care about an anime made in 1928. So let's move forward a couple decades to the first true sports anime. To find the first sports anime that we can all agree is actually an anime, I scrolled through every season of anime on my anime list after 1963 when Astro Boy released. I'd hoped I'd never have to do this again after making my best anime of every year video, which is really draining, but I did find the first sports anime that could really completely be considered one in 1967 Speed Racer.
Here comes Speed Racer, he's a demon on wheels. He's a demon and he's gonna be chasing after someone.
About a young man named Speed who wants to be a professional racer. He drives a very fast car designed by his father called the Mach 5. So he's really just a product of nepotism, but I guess he's also pretty good at his job. The first episode opens with Speed winning a race and being recruited to a professional team. The only problem is that his father, despite being an incredible racing engineer, doesn't want him to race on a team. It then cuts to his father at a business meeting where he's proposing rebuilding the Mach 5 to make it better, but even though he's this genius engineer, his idea gets unanimously shut down by everybody else, probably out of jealousy. So after that, he storms out and Speed drives him home. And on their way home, they're ambushed by three men on bikes who steal plans for rebuilding the Mach 5. Naturally, Speed jumps out of the moving car and puts one of the men into a textbook rear naked, but seriously, this is the opposite of textbook. He doesn't even make an attempt to lock the choke with his other hand, but when this doesn't work out, he jumps from that bike onto another and executes another rear naked choke. After a long scene involving a triangle and a helicopter, they get their plans back. That's all I'll summarize because it's a little bit chaotic, but if you're interested, I'd recommend checking it out. It's pretty good for a 1967 anime, and I think it has something to offer for an audience of all ages. Plus, there's 52 episodes, so if you like it, there's plenty to enjoy. While it doesn't have the flashy animation that modern sports anime bring to the table, it does combine good action, sports, and politics into a show that I believe still holds up decades later. And it's a great example of how sports anime are able to explore the personal lives of the characters outside of their sports and politics that go along with professional sports. While Speed Racer is a great sports anime that displays a lot of the great things about the genre, watching it clearly feels different than modern sports anime. Part of that is due to its age, but the genre really hadn't found its footing. The standards still hadn't been set. To see that form, we only have to move forward a couple years. In 1969, Attack Number 1 released, which feels much more like what I think of in a sports anime. Maybe that's because it takes place in a school, but it also just seems to follow so many common tropes. It's about a girl in middle school who's all cool and mysterious. In the opening scene, she falls asleep in class, and when the teacher wakes her up, she gets the question right. So that just paints who she is as a character. But then one day she's standing just around the school and a volleyball gets hit towards her, and she receives it perfectly, which gets the attention of the school volleyball team, and then some stuff happens, and the series follows her step by step. She strives to achieve her volleyball dreams. This feels very similar to modern sports anime with a focus on school life and a main character that has a dream to make it to the national team. However, the series doesn't seem to be that popular, so it's not what I'm looking for in finding the most influential sports anime. But to find that, we only have to move forward another year to 1970, the year that classic anime Ashita no Joe released. I talked about this anime before in my anime of a year video, but to repeat what I've said, the only thing that really shows its age is the animation. Plot-wise, it feels a lot like the anime that we all know and occasionally love. I don't really want to spoil any of the plot because this is a show that I really do suggest you watch. All I really have to say is that Ashita no Joe is when you really start to see so many of the tropes that are in sports anime and anime in general. The main character is a traditional, mysterious, overpowered anime main character and will eventually become a boxer. Not only is it the first good sports anime, it's still one of the best to this day. It really sets a standard for the character-driven stories that go along with sports in anime, but not many have been able to match the emotional impact of Ashita no Joe. If you get anything out of this video, it should be to watch this show. While Ashita no Joe planted the seed that would create so many great sports anime, the game-changing show that set the format that sports anime follow to this day did not come for another 13 years. Captain Tsubasa has a very strong argument for being the most influential sports anime ever, not only for its effect on anime but sports and culture in general. Several professional soccer players have openly said that this show inspired them to pursue soccer. The show was so inspiring that it literally changed lives. Elements from this series can be seen in pretty much every sports anime that came after it. It follows Tsubasa Uezora, an 11-year-old soccer player that dreams of playing for the Japanese national team in the World Cup. The series revolutionized the way sports are portrayed in anime by popularizing the combination of realistic gameplay with exaggerated techniques. You know how all sports anime over-explain some special move before every game, and then during the game it'll go into slow motion and some character on the sideline will describe what's going on, and then you'll listen to the thoughts of the characters as they're going through the events. This does happen in most anime, but Captain Tsubasa is what brought that to sports anime and popularized it. The show also created the archetype of sports anime main characters and established a lot of common conflicts and plot points. Ashita no Joe did a great job at portraying a character-driven sports anime, but Captain Tsubasa is really what influenced the multi-dimensional aspect of the genre and delving not only into sports but also the personal struggles and relationships between characters. It was one of the first sports anime to take advantage of the concept of rivals and driving character development. The impact of Captain Tsubasa cannot be overstated, and at this point I've covered most of the evolution from Animal Olympic Games to the modern sports anime era. Now I'll just talk about some of the most important and influential shows that have come in this modern era. A decade after Captain Tsubasa, the Slam Dunk anime released. I love Slam Dunk. It's another example of how sports anime can both showcase great sports moments, but still have the greatest aspects come from the characters and their relationships. Slam Dunk was incredibly influential in setting the stereotypical character relationships that you see in not only sports anime but anime in general. Slam Dunk also isn't that old relatively to the other shows I've talked about, so there's no reason you shouldn't watch it. Also, it's sometimes credited as popularizing basketball in Japan, so that just goes to show how influential and inspirational the show can be. But now for one of my favorite sports anime, Hajime no Ippo. The show is just so entertaining and one of the most inspiring shows I've ever seen. I'll say it, it's a better boxing franchise than Rocky. After I watched it, I would just walk around my house shadow boxing. I might even have worked out once or twice. It's also just a very easily consumable show. Even though you should pay attention to the whole plot, even if you don't and you just tune in during some of the matches, they're so entertaining that you'll still have fun watching them. You can really see the Captain Tsubasa influence in the fact that every fight, Ippo will learn this new special move, and then during the fight, his coach in the corner will describe what's going on, and you'll hear Ippo narrating his thoughts and how he's going to use this move. The show's on Crunchyroll, so I'd suggest watching it. After that, I just want to talk about the biggest anime in the more modern era, like Haikyuu, which is pretty good for a very monotonous sport. Playing volleyball is fun, but watching it is only enjoyable for about 45 seconds. Kuroko's Basketball is a pretty good example of the success of extremely over-exaggerated abilities in real sports. And some solid soccer anime released last year in Aoashi and Blue Lock. I haven't seen Blue Lock, but Aoashi is one of the only things that has gotten me almost close to being somewhat interested in soccer. Other than the last World Cup, I watched that like everyone else. Now that I've covered how anime evolved from silent cutout animations to the shows we see today, I want to try to put into words what makes sports anime such a magical combination. Almost everyone played at least one sport growing up. I personally played football, basketball, lacrosse, which is an embarrassing one, and a little bit of baseball. So sports are something that are pretty easy to relate to for the average viewer. Even if real sports situations aren't as dramatic as those in Ashita no Joe or Haikyuu, there's a very strong emotional impact of making a playoff run in a childhood sport, or even losing every game and building a strong connection with your teammates. There's nothing quite like the community that is built between players on a football team or any other team sport. So the drama in sports anime is much easier to understand and seems a lot more realistic than that in less relatable shows. Even if the characters in sports anime accomplish unrealistic feats, the setting itself is very grounded in reality, so the viewers are able to see themselves in these situations. It's much easier to see yourself as a volleyball player than as a ninja or a pirate. So sports anime are able to reach an emotional impact that hit much closer to the audience than most shows. Past the emotional impact, sports in general are a very entertaining thing. I watch football every Sunday when it's on, and those are real people with no superhuman abilities. Now, taking an already entertaining concept and adding extraordinary abilities and flashy animation, and you have a recipe for success. Animation allows sports anime to not only be more exciting than real sports, but also any live-action sports stories. The abilities of animation to portray exaggerated action in a cool-looking way can't really be replicated by any other medium. People flash stepping around and kicking a ball at the speed of sound just looks a little ridiculous outside of animation. Other than Shaolin Soccer, that's a pretty good movie. The combination of realistic sports with elements of fantasy is one of my favorite parts of sports anime. It's very important that the balance between them is kept. I don't see why any anime would feel the need to create a fictional sport when so many great sports have yet to be explored in anime. Like, why does Keijo exist? There's still no bowling anime, but whatever this is as an anime. I understand that it's much more marketable than bowling, but that just leaves me disappointed with every single anime fan. Imagine how cool a bowling anime would be. I love bowling, but watching it is a terrible experience. It's too slow and way too monotonous. All of this could be solved if it were to be animated. There's also so much obvious potential in incorporating anime elements into bowling. Like, imagine the ball being thrown at lightning speed, spinning side to side, and eventually landing a 7-10 split. Maybe I made this entire video just to beg for a bowling anime, but I don't regret doing that. But moving on, while the flashy animation sets sports anime apart from sports, movies, and shows, what really makes it great is the exploration of team relationships, rivalries, and conflicts that can be brought into sports through outside personal struggles. These are all vital aspects of people's experience with sports, but they really aren't shown when watching actual sports. Most of the time when I watch sports anime, the sports scenes aren't even my favorite. Some of the best parts is watching the team build chemistry, seeing rivals turn into great teammates, and watching characters overcome struggles and finding success. Like in Hajime no Ippo, where you see Ippo's discovery and instant passion for boxing, as well as seeing his motivations to continue and how his personal and family life affect his boxing. Ippo and Miyata are a perfect example of how rivalries can drive sports anime forward and add even more suspense, as well as the development of this rivalry into one of mutual respect, was something that's really hard to get the full picture of in normal sports. Like, sure, rivalries exist, but you don't see the personal interactions between the players very often. Another way that Hajime no Ippo is really the perfect example of what makes sports anime special is the way it personifies every character, even Ippo's opponents. Before pretty much every fight, it shows the personal lives of his opponents and explores their motivations, and they usually add a very emotional consequence to every match. Like Ippo's opponents, seeing the matches like their last shot at boxing, and while I always still root for Ippo, they made it really hard to not care about the other character losing. I almost didn't want either character to lose in any of the fights because they all had very developed backgrounds and it made me feel attached to every character. But this video has been a lot of rambling, so I'm going to try to pull it all together. So sports anime offers a captivating experience that transcends the boundaries of traditional sports and anime alone. It has the power to immerse us in compelling stories that intertwine real sports with personal growth and struggle. As the genre has evolved, animators and writers have found ways to truly push the boundaries of animation, showcasing incredible feats and intense matches that captivate our imaginations. The greatness of sports anime goes past the portrayal of cool abilities. They're great because they delve deep into the personal lives and relationships of the characters and add unmatched stakes to each and every match. While all of these things do exist in real sports, they're usually unseen. Sports anime are able to bring these aspects to light and show us that there's so much that goes into sports that you don't see in games. And before you think I'm a loser, I don't think sports anime are better than football, but I do think they bring something to the table that traditional sports can't. And while it's by no means a replacement for sports, it can bring sports that may be boring to watch into a next level experience. But at this point, I feel like I've said all I have to say about sports anime, so I'm just gonna wrap it up. Thanks so much for watching the video, and if you liked it, I'd appreciate a like. If you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing. Bye.